Is she alive? Is she breathing?
No. Okay. Oh, God, why'd she do that?
This is Matthew Ecker, a man who would go down in history as a bad actor, a bad liar, a bad husband, a bad lover, and just a bad person.
Okay. She is a girlfriend of mine. Oh, my God, I'm married. And she has been... Oh, my girlfriend, I was just for like 2 years.
On the morning of December 9th, 2022, just after 3 o'clock, officers rushed into a Minneapolis apartment building after a frantic 911 call. The man who greeted them in the hallway looked like someone drowning in grief. His voice cracked as he told them his friend had locked herself in the bathroom, taken his gun, and pulled the trigger.
I'm gonna be totally honest.
Just take your time, keep breathing, and you can just when you're ready, okay? Yeah, in a rush.
Oh my God, why did she do it?
Please, bro.
Oh God, why did she do that?
The victim he was referring to was Alexandra Alex Penig. And according to him, here's what happened.
And we went to a bar.
Today?
Yep.
Okay.
It's a bar. Camp? Does that make sense?
Camp bar?
Yep. We came back here after that, like everything was fine.
Who's we, you and her?
Her and I.
Okay.
Everybody got, he got kicked out of the bar.
Okay.
And we stayed for about an hour maybe.
Okay.
God!
And then what happened?
That fight he was talking about is a little more complicated than it seems, and to really get it, you've got to know the people involved. For starters, Alexandra Penig's story didn't begin in tragedy. It began in the year 1990 when Jim and Mary Jo Penig welcomed her into their family. By all accounts, Alex was raised in a household filled with warmth, faith, and encouragement. From an early age, she was different, empathetic, attentive, someone who noticed when others were hurting. Friends recall how she could walk into a room and instantly sense who needed comfort. That gift of compassion eventually became her calling. Alex pursued her education with determination, starting at Montana State University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in public health. She continued at St. Paul College to complete her licensed practical nursing certification, and then trained at Alexandria Technical and Community College, becoming a registered nurse. But for Alex, the diplomas and titles weren't about prestige. They were tools to help her serve, and serve she did. Alex built her career around caring for those too often overlooked. She sought opportunities to work with the underprivileged, believing dignity and compassion should never depend on someone's income or circumstance. Patients remembered her as competent and kind. Colleagues admired her warmth and dedication, and her sister Brittany once said, Alex's true gift wasn't just her medical skill. It was her ability to make people believe in themselves again. But Alex's life wasn't without struggle. She faced challenges with mental health and addiction, battles that tested her resilience. And perhaps the most difficult chapter she faced was falling for the man she once believed was the love of her life, Matthew Ecker, a married man with a wife and 4 children. Now, a disclaimer must be said here. If you know someone is married, it's best never to pursue them, because it almost always ends in heartbreak, chaos, and pain. But in Alex's case, we cannot simply blame the victim. There are many who believe she was manipulated by Matthew, drawn in by his charm, and convinced that he would leave his old life behind to build something new with her. Whether he fed her promises or she clung to hope, the truth is that their secret relationship dragged on for nearly 2 years. It was easier for them to stay entangled because both worked in the healthcare field. Their shared professional world gave them cover, and their long hours and overlapping shifts provided the kind of access that made secrecy possible. But while Alex was searching for love, stability, and honesty, Matthew was offering only fragments of himself, and keeping the rest locked away in the home where his wife and children lived. By the time winter settled over Minneapolis in December of 2022, Matthew's double life was teetering on the edge. The stress of juggling a marriage, 4 children, and a secret relationship with Alex was beginning to show. His dissatisfaction at home, his arrogance at work, and his growing entanglement with Alex were on a collision course. That collision came to a head on the night of December 15th, when Matthew and Alex went out to a popular bar called Camp. To anyone else, it might have looked like a normal night out: drinks, conversation, the buzz of music and chatter filling the air. But for Alex, her worlds were about to collide. Her boyfriend at the time showed up at the bar, and when he saw her with Matthew, tempers flared. Surveillance cameras later confirmed what Matthew told police. He tried to step between Alex and her boyfriend, putting himself in the middle of the confrontation. In the footage, you can see the moment fists fly. Alex's boyfriend punches Matthew square in the face. Bouncers and staff rush in, pulling them apart, and before long, the boyfriend is thrown out of the bar. Alex and Matthew stay behind, shaken, but still together. For Matthew, the fight was a blow to the careful balance he'd been maintaining. Now, others had seen his secret life spill into public view. Yet when he recounted the night later to detectives, he brushed it off as though nothing had happened. He told them he and Alex had stayed at the bar, had another drink, and then walked home together, laughing like nothing was wrong. He wanted it to sound like a harmless night, a misunderstanding quickly forgotten. But when the pair arrived back at Alex's St. Paul apartment, something shifted. Whatever joy or laughter Matthew claimed had filled their walk home quickly dissolved. Neighbors would later recall hearing faint noises, not enough to alarm them at the time, but just enough to suggest tension. Inside that apartment, the fragile world Matthew had built was unraveling. Hours later, just after 3 in the morning, a 911 call would bring officers to the scene. They found Matthew in the hallway, hyperventilating, sobbing, telling them his friend was in the bathroom. According to him, Alex had grabbed his gun, locked the door, and shot herself.
She just grabbed it and put it to her head.
Were you guys arguing or something?
No, when her and her boyfriend argued, I stepped in between them and that's me. He punched me and we were fine for like an hour. I don't know what happened.
Do you know where your boyfriend's right now?
I don't know. I don't know. I think
Did he come here too or no?
No, he didn't come here.
Was it you or
He
her?
didn't come here. It was just me.
Okay.
He got kicked out of the bar. And we stayed for like 45 minutes to an hour. And then we left and we walked and we came here and she just grabbed me and then she went into the bathroom and I her.
Officers guided him through his breathing, trying to calm him down. They wrote down his words, listened to his story, but even as he spoke, they were already noticing details that didn't make sense. The blood in the bathroom was already dry. The gun was too clean, and Matthew himself, a man who claimed to have tried to cradle Alex in his arms, who said he had attempted to save her, didn't have a single speck of blood on him. Still, he stuck to his account. He insisted Alex had locked herself in the bathroom, that the door was shut when the gun went off. He repeated it again and again, as though saying it enough times might erase the evidence already forming against him. By sunrise, what Matthew wanted officers to believe was a tragic self-harm had already started to look like something much darker.
Okay. I work in an emergency department. And I started taking a couple of just like chain stokes breathing.
Yeah.
Like I understood that this was just done. She just, I tried what I could.
So, and I know that I just have to, because I have
Yeah,
a medical examiner.
I get it. Like I tried to do what I could.
Okay.
And then I washed my hands. And
Then you wash your hands?
Correct. That's why I don't have anything.
And then you called the police?
Matthew initially told officers that Alex had been upset, that she went into his backpack, pulled out his gun, and locked herself in the bathroom. He said he pleaded with her through the door, begging her not to do it. But then came the sound of a gunshot. He claimed he had forced the door open, tried to save her, even attempted to stop the bleeding before washing his hands and calling 911. It sounded tragic. It sounded believable enough. But to detectives who had worked countless cases, something wasn't right. His crying was loud, but his eyes were dry. He claimed to have tried first aid, but he wasn't covered in blood. He said he rinsed his hands, but the bathroom sink was bone dry. And on the floor, beneath Alex's body, lay a piece of the bathroom door lock, a detail that quietly contradicted his story. The officers didn't confront him right away. Instead, they kept him talking. They soothed him, encouraged him to breathe, told him he wasn't in trouble, and gently suggested he come down to the station where they could go over everything more comfortably. It was a tactic, a way to move him from the scene into an environment where they could push harder.
We're very sorry for that. So here's the best case right now, or the best solution is, why don't we have you come to headquarters,
You guys,
and then that way we can arrange, one, anytime there's an incident like this, investigator may come and talk. We got to get that info, and then at least there you're not sitting in a hallway, and then we can figure out to get your stuff, get your property. Do you have a vehicle here?
I do.
Okay, so then we can figure out those things to either get you somewhere to stay for the night or get you back to your vehicle. But it's not fair you to have to sit in the hallway when you're trying to process all this right now. So, you okay with that then?
By 6 o'clock that morning, Matthew was seated in an interrogation room at the police station. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the room plain and unwelcoming. Detectives sat across from him, giving him space to tell his story again. They asked him to walk them through the night, the bar, the fight, the walk back to the apartment. And just like before, he recounted every detail of the bar incident with near-perfect clarity. He described the punch, the bouncers, the boyfriend being thrown out. He could replay that scene as if it had happened minutes ago. But when the questions shifted to Alex, to the bathroom, to the gun, his answers grew shaky. He repeated the same phrases over and over. The door was shut. The door was shut when the gun went off. He insisted he hadn't touched her until after it was too late. He claimed he had tried to save her, though he couldn't explain why there was no trace of it on him. Detectives leaned in, watching him carefully. They had been to hundreds of self-harm. They knew the signs, the patterns, the way evidence usually told the story. And what Matthew described didn't match any of it. But for now, they let him talk. The longer he spoke, the more the cracks in his story widened.
After all of this had happened, we went back to her apartment, roughly 2 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock. She went in my backpack, pulled up the gun, and cocked it, and held it to her head, and I started backing up towards the bathroom. And I asked her what she was doing. She said, "Don't come closer, just if you come any closer, I'm gonna pull the trigger." And I was like, okay. And I don't know where this came from. It wasn't. I know there had been some issues with her boyfriend prior to this, but she seemed fine. You know, we were laughing on the way home. Everything was fine. And then
What Matthew didn't know at the time was that while he sat in the interrogation room, detectives were already moving on to the next lead. They went straight to Shane Anderson, the man described as Alex's boyfriend, the same man who had gotten into a heated altercation with Matthew at the bar only hours earlier.
Trust me, you're not in trouble for anything.
Hi, Shane. I'm Daryl. This is Nate. Did you hear what happened?
So, one of your friends was injured last night?
Last night?
Yeah. And I'm thinking that you were with them last night?
Who?
I have a witness that says you were with Matt Ecker.
I don't even know who that is.
Okay. And Alexandra? You know Alex Pennig?
I know who Alex is. That's I've been dating her,
Okay.
but I don't know.
Right now you're dating her?
I have been,
Oh, sure.
so I don't know what.
So your last night, by chance?
I didn't. I didn't run into her last night. No, I don't know. I haven't been talking to her.
You have a piece of something, like a piece of tape on your left. Oh God. Like it's a contact lens. You wear contact?
Yeah, I do wear contact.
Reflection
Actually,
sight right there, bro. I don't think it's any good anymore. So it's not good news for her. And we have investigators downtown who would like to chat with you about last night. And
It's not good news for her.
yeah,
What do you mean? Is she okay?
no.
What do you mean?
So the investigators wanted, so she was in a lot of trouble.
She's in a lot of trouble?
And the investigators want to chat with you about what you know of her. For some reason, they know that you were an ex-boyfriend or something, that you might have information about who she hangs out with. Potentially, you were with them at a bar last night.
I wasn't.
Okay. This is just somebody, one of her other friends that mentioned your name.
Is she okay?
She's passed away.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why we need you to talk to the investigators.
Oh.
I can't share all that. I don't have all the information. The investigators need to chat with you. You could just get Abby on the line.
Alex Penning? You're kidding me.
No, I would
You're
not.
kidding me.
I wouldn't.
God.
I'm sorry to be the bearer.
Please, no.
So,
I didn't see you yesterday, but I've been. You're kidding me.
no, I wouldn't kid.
You cannot.
I know it's obviously as serious as it gets.
Oh my God. Like that's like we're I was talking about like moving out of my place and like moving in with her. We've been she's been okay. Like
Have you've dated in the past?
we've been like
rekindling?
no, we've been like consistently like dating like for the past like 3 months.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good thing.
What what happened?
I do not know. The investigators have asked us to come try to make contact with you so you can come chat with them. So, because you have dated her for 3 months, they would like to get any information they can from you about who she hangs out with, what she.
I know that
The investigator.
This is an investigator. She just wants to ask if you would come speak to her.
Hey, what happened? How is this?
Hey, this is Sergeant Stan of St. Paul Police. Hey, I am the investigator on this case. We just need you to come down with the guys that you're with right now.
I'm not with anybody.
No, us.
You're
Us.
with them. You're
Oh,
with
The police.
Yep. We just need you to come down and talk to us about last night and just kind of everything that happened. You're not in any trouble. We need to discuss, kind of go over the events of...
how did she pass?
The autopsy would later confirm what detectives suspected. Alexandra Pennig's wound was consistent with close contact, meaning the gun had been fired at or near her head, not from the awkward angle Matthew described. The path of the bullet, the absence of blood and residue on her hands, and the state of the scene all pointed away from suicide. Forensic experts testified that Matthew's story simply didn't align with the medical findings. Then there was the timeline. The blood had already dried when police arrived, suggesting Alex had been shot well before Matthew made the 911 call. If she had truly just taken her own life, the scene would have looked very different. Instead, it appeared staged, as though Matthew had spent time constructing the version of events he wanted police to believe. And finally, there was Matthew himself, a man who claimed to be a medical professional, someone trained to react in emergencies, yet his instinct had been to wash his hands and call 911 late, rather than perform aid and leave evidence of his efforts. A man who spoke in long, elaborate detail about a bar fight, but who could not convincingly describe the most crucial moment of the night, the supposed self-inflicted gunshot wound of the woman he claimed to love. By the time the case went to trial, prosecutors had a clear narrative. Matthew Ecker had been living a double life, carrying on a 2-year affair with Alex while still married with 4 children at home. His marriage was strained, his secrets were piling up, and his temper and control issues had begun to surface. On the night of December 15th, after a public confrontation with Alex's boyfriend at a bar, he returned with her to her apartment. There, something happened, an argument, a confrontation, or simply his fear that his double life was unraveling. Whatever the trigger, prosecutors argued, Matthew shot Alex, then staged the scene to look like a self-harm. The defense, of course, pushed back. They leaned heavily on Alex's struggles with mental health and addiction, suggesting she had been unstable and capable of taking her own life. They painted Matthew not as a killer, but as a flawed man who had made mistakes, a husband who had strayed, a lover who had hidden a relationship, but not a murderer. They told the jury that the evidence was circumstantial, that no one could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Matthew had pulled the trigger. But the jury didn't buy it. The broken door lock, the clean gun, the absence of blood, the autopsy, each piece chipped away at the suicide theory. And Matthew himself, with his endless contradictions and rehearsed phrases, did little to convince anyone of his innocence. In the end, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Matthew Ecker was convicted of second-degree murder in the death of Alexandra Penig. The sentence, 30 years in prison. But as with many high-profile cases, a courtroom verdict doesn't mean the story ends. In fact, for some, it was only the beginning of a different kind of trial, the trial of public opinion. Almost immediately, debates erupted online. True crime forums, local news comment sections, and Reddit threads filled with people dissecting the case. Some saw the conviction as justice served, a clear-cut example of a man who staged a crime scene to cover his tracks. But others weren't so sure. They pointed to gaps in the investigation, to questions about forensics, and to elements of Alex's own struggles that, they argued, left room for doubt. One commenter wrote, "He's guilty of being a terrible husband, guilty of prescribing medications he shouldn't have, but murder? I'm not convinced." Another added, "If you look at the physical evidence, it's not as airtight as the prosecution made it sound." These voices didn't erase the jury's decision, but they highlighted an uneasy truth. Not everyone was convinced Matthew was a killer. That uncertainty only grew stronger as his legal team filed an appeal. They argued the case against him was circumstantial, built more on narrative than hard proof. And they had points worth considering. For example, Matthew's DNA wasn't found on the gun, a puzzling absence, considering he admitted moving it. The sink, which police said was bone dry, could have been explained if he had delayed entering the bathroom. And then there was Alex's history, her struggles with addiction and mental health, which the defense argued should not be ignored. None of this erased the mountain of evidence the state had presented, but it was enough for some to question whether the conviction rested on certainty or on the jury's distrust of Matthew's character. The case gained even more attention when CBS's 48 Hours devoted an entire episode to it, the unusual shooting of Alex Penig. The program reconstructed the final hours of Alex's life, combining interviews, body cam footage, and forensic analysis. Detectives walked viewers through the details that troubled them most: the pristine gun, the spotless hands, the broken lock under Alex's body. Detective Abby DeSanto put it plainly: I've been to dozens of self-inflicted death, and this didn't fit. But even 48 hours acknowledged the gray areas. They noted the gaps in phone records. They pointed out that Alex's boyfriend, Shane Anderson, the man who punched Matthew at the bar that night, was never scrutinized as heavily as Matthew. His phone was reportedly lost, and his presence at the bar raised questions that were never fully answered in court. Was he uninvolved? Almost certainly. But for skeptics, the fact that those angles weren't fully explored left them uneasy. Then there's the forensics. Experts remain divided. Some argue the lack of blood on Matthew's clothes is damning, proof he lied about trying to save her. Others counter that panic could have limited his response, or that his contact with Alex was brief. Some say the left-handed trigger pull Matthew described is improbable but not impossible. And while prosecutors leaned on the broken lock as proof of forced entry, others wondered, could it have broken earlier, during an argument or struggle unrelated to the shot itself? For Alex's family, these debates are painful. To them, the jury's verdict brought closure, even if it couldn't bring Alex back. Her parents, Jim and Mary Jo, spoke publicly about their relief, saying they always felt something about Matthew's story didn't add up. Knowing our daughter, Mary Jo said, it just didn't fit. But for Matthew's family, the verdict was devastating in another way. They continued to insist he was innocent, describing him as devoted, intelligent, and incapable of murder. To them, the conviction was the result of a narrative shaped against him, a flawed man punished not for what he did, but for how he appeared. The appeal process reflected this divide. Matthew's lawyers argued to a 3-judge panel that the state hadn't met its burden of proof. They claimed the evidence was thin and circumstantial, and that the jury was swayed by emotion. But in a unanimous decision, the appellate court upheld the conviction, writing that the evidence was sufficient and the jury was justified in its conclusion. With that ruling, Matthew's 30-year sentence remained intact. Still, questions linger. Why weren't Alex's phone records subpoenaed? Why wasn't Shane Anderson more deeply investigated? Why did certain forensic anomalies, like the dry sink and the absence of DNA on the gun, never receive more thorough answers in court? For those who believe Matthew is innocent, these aren't minor details. They're the kinds of gaps that keep the case alive in discussion boards and living rooms long after the gavel fell. And perhaps that's the larger truth about this case. It sits uneasily in the space between narrative and fact, between certainty and doubt. On one hand, the evidence and the verdict say clearly that Matthew Ecker shot and killed Alexandra Penig. On the other, the unanswered questions leave cracks in the foundation, just wide enough for doubt to seep in. For the Penig family, there is no doubt. They remember Alex as a woman who gave her life to caring for others, a nurse whose compassion touched countless lives. For them, justice was achieved when Matthew was sentenced. But for others, Matthew's family, a portion of the public, and even some in the forensic community, the case still feels unresolved. What's undeniable is that Alex's story has touched far more people in death than she ever could have imagined in life. Her compassion, her resilience, her battles, and her tragic end are now etched into the fabric of true crime history.
Cases like this aren't as rare as we might hope. In fact, another chilling story, this one involving James Coley Jr., unfolds with echoes just as haunting.
He shot me, and he shot Wendy Dobbins, our other friend that was there with us. I'm hiding in a closet at the neighbor's house. I'm scared to death.
This desperate cry for help came from Rachel Hendricks, a woman who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Rachel was one of 3 close friends who gathered at Amanda Colley's upscale home in a quiet suburban neighborhood on what seemed like an ordinary Thursday morning in August 2015. They were there to comfort Amanda as she struggled through the painful collapse of her marriage, but none of them had any idea that, within hours, their lives would be shattered forever.
911. Hello? Ma'am, what's your address? Ma'am? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Did you hear what she said, Esso?
No, I didn't. She was screaming bloody murder.
Is that gunfire?
Oh my God.
In this sudden burst of chaos and gunfire, their lives were stolen, leaving behind grieving families and 5 young children who would never see their mothers again. A once tranquil community was thrown into shock and heartbreak. But what could have caused such a horrific attack? What led to this moment of terror? This is the tragic story of Amanda Colley, a woman for whom the help of the courts came far too late.
That she is the reason this happened. She didn't give him the fortitude he needed. She didn't tell the truth. She wouldn't confirm what he already knew was true. It's her fault.
Amanda had been living in her family home in Mirabella, a beautiful and upscale neighborhood in St. Augustine, Florida. She and her husband, James Colley Jr., had chosen it as the perfect place to raise their children. If you took a walk through their neighborhood, you'd immediately get the sense that the Colley family was living a good life. To anyone on the outside, they seemed like the perfect, happy, and successful family. Neighbors often saw James laughing and playing with their 2 children, 6-year-old Trey and 4-year-old Avery, in the cul-de-sac. The couple was known for hosting lively gatherings, inviting friends over for drinks and celebrations. Even as their marriage started to unravel, Amanda and James appeared to handle it with quiet grace. Whatever struggles they faced stayed hidden behind closed doors. That's why the events of August 27, 2015 were so shocking. Around 9 o'clock that morning, Rachel Hendricks received a message that something was wrong with Amanda. She and Amanda had been friends for years, having met at a mutual friends party. Along with Lindy Dobbins, the 3 women had formed an unbreakable bond. They babysat each other's children, supported one another in times of distress, and were always just a phone call away. So when Amanda needed them, Rachel and Lindy didn't hesitate. That morning, Rachel had just dropped her kids off at school. Before heading to Amanda's house, she made a quick stop at a friend's home to get her hair done. It was supposed to be a normal day. But for Amanda, the chaos had already begun. Her usually pristine Mirabella home had been completely trashed overnight while she was away. When she returned at 9 o'clock that morning, she walked into a nightmare. Drawers had been pulled out, clothes and papers were scattered everywhere, personal belongings had been tossed aside, and even her TV had been smashed to pieces. Strangely, nothing had been stolen. Everything had simply been torn apart, as if someone had been searching for something. Maybe at that moment, Amanda realized just how much danger she was in. Maybe that's why she called her friends over, believing that safety came in numbers. But as that morning would soon prove, no number of people could have protected her from what was coming. Inside the house that morning were 4 people: Amanda, Lindy, Rachel, and Lamar Duberly. Lamar was Amanda's boyfriend. She had been officially separated from her husband James since June, but she had met Lamar months earlier in April. Their connection started as a professional relationship, but slowly evolved into something more personal. By June 2015, after her separation, Amanda and Lamar had begun seeing each other.
Can you describe how that relationship started, if it progressed, and how it progressed?
The relationship started professionally, progressed into a personal relationship, and then we began seeing each other in June 2015.
And ultimately that was an intimate relationship, correct?
Correct.
Now, Lamar wasn't just any man. He was a force to be reckoned with. A former military officer with an impressive resume, he had attended the U.S. Naval Academy, studied at the Marine Corps University, and even worked at the Pentagon. Sharp, disciplined, and strategic, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had seen and handled high-stakes situations. Amanda met him while they were both working in corporate management at Fanatics, a sportswear company. As her marriage with James crumbled, she found solace in Lamar, a man who offered stability when everything else in her life was spiraling. And on that fateful Thursday morning, when she returned home to find her house torn apart, Lamar was one of the first people she called.
After she got to the house, did you hear from her?
I did.
Amanda. How did you hear from her? Call or text?
Amanda FaceTimed me, and I was able to survey the damage with her.
Lamar, Lindy, and Rachel arrived, each of them hoping to provide Amanda with comfort and a sense of security. Together, they walked through the wreckage, drawers overturned, belongings scattered, a silent warning that something was terribly wrong. While Amanda and Lindy stayed upstairs, trying to make sense of it all, Lamar took Rachel to the garage to assess the damage.
Did there come a time that you were notified that something was going on in Amanda's house?
Yes.
And who notified you of that?
Lindy.
Now imagine coming home to find your house completely ransacked, drawers pulled out, belongings scattered, every inch of your safe space violated. That alone is terrifying. But before you even have a chance to process the mess, gunshots ring out. Suddenly, a trashed home doesn't seem so bad. Amanda barely had time to react before the chaos escalated. Outside, a man stood in her backyard, gripping a handgun and aiming it directly at the living room. Shattered glass sprayed in all directions as bullets tore through the windows. His furious voice echoed through the air, saying, "Where is he?" over and over again. That man was James Colley, Amanda's estranged husband, and he wasn't just there to scare them. He was out for blood. Inside, Rachel and Lamar froze for a split second. Then reality hit. James wasn't just shooting into the house at random. He was looking for someone, and Lamar didn't need to guess who. With Amanda in the middle of a messy legal battle, her home torn apart, and her new relationship no longer a secret, Lamar knew immediately that he was the target. Without hesitation, Lamar yelled for everyone to run. Then he bolted. He ducked under the garage door and sprinted between two houses in the cul-de-sac, his pulse racing as he put as much distance as possible between himself and the enraged gunman.
What did you do?
I left. I thought that I was the targeted individual, and so I wasn't armed. I left.
Now, if you were in Lamar's shoes at that moment, what would you do? Would you leave Amanda behind, or would you make the same choice he did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, Amanda and Lindy, caught further inside the house, had no way out. They did the only thing they could. They ran upstairs. Rachel followed, her instincts screaming at her to find shelter. Amanda locked herself in the bathroom, while Lindy and Rachel dove into the master bedroom closet, barricading the door. Rachel braced herself, her foot pressed against the bottom of the door, her left hand gripping the doorknob with all her strength. Lindy crouched behind a chest of drawers, silent, barely breathing. At this point, James stormed through the front door while his gun was still drawn. He stomped up the stairs, rage fueling every step. He wanted Lamar, but Lamar was gone. Instead, he found Amanda. From inside the closet, Rachel and Lindy could hear him screaming.
Like I said, Amanda and Mr. Colley were outside in the bathroom area arguing. Mr. Colley was wanting to know, where is he? Where is he? Where the fuck is he? Amanda was, very upset, crying, saying that he's not in here. I don't know. He's not in here. At one point, I believe Mr. Colley came over and tried to get into the closet door, and Amanda said, "He's not in there. That's Rachel and Lindy in there. That's Rachel and Lindy." And Lindy said, "It's Lindy in here." I never said anything, but she shouted out and said, "It's Lindy." At that time, I heard a shot while Amanda and Mr. Colley were arguing, and that was all I heard of Amanda.
But if you think James's rage ended with Amanda, think again. His bloodlust wasn't satisfied. After gunning down his wife, he turned his attention to the master closet, where Rachel and Lindy were hiding. As mentioned earlier, Rachel was using her arm to brace the door while Lindy frantically relayed their desperate situation to the 911 operator. James, growing more impatient by the second, pounded on the door and shouted, "Open the door! Open it now!" When they didn't comply, he fired. The bullet tore through the door, grazed Rachel's arm, and the searing pain forced her to stumble backward. That moment of weakness was all James needed. He kicked the door open, his eyes wild with rage. But Rachel got lucky. James wasn't looking for her. His target was Lindy. Without hesitation, he stormed past Rachel, giving her the split-second chance she needed. Heart pounding, she turned and ran, fleeing into the neighborhood, desperately searching for help. Meanwhile, Lamar, who had escaped earlier, had also found someone who called 911.
911, do you have an emergency?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Some dude just come running down the street. He said there's been gunfire, shots fired, something.
How many shots did they hear?
I don't know. We're just working out here. He come
running. But by the time law enforcement arrived, it was too late. James had vanished, leaving behind a house soaked in blood and horror. The once safe home was now a crime scene, a place of unthinkable violence and devastating loss.
Information about a deadly rampage in a St. Johns County neighborhood. Investigators say James Cawley shot and killed his wife and her best friend.
Lindy had been shot 3 times. Amanda, 9. James had shot her once before, forcing his way into the closet where Lindy and Rachel were hiding. Then, after killing Lindy, he unleashed 8 more bullets into Amanda's body. He had started with a 9mm handgun, emptying it into Lindy, and when that was out of bullets, he pulled out his .45, a backup weapon, proof that he had come prepared for something far worse than just an argument. This wasn't just a crime of passion, it was pure, calculated rage. But why? Not much is known about the early days of James and Amanda's relationship. Amanda was 36 years old in the year 2015, a year older than James. She was born in Orlando, Florida, and had built a successful life for herself. Professionally, she thrived, and socially, she was surrounded by people who adored her. James, on the surface, appeared just as put together. He worked in the mortgage industry and lived what seemed to be a stable life alongside his wife and children. To those looking in from the outside, he was a devoted father, a man who spent every waking moment with his kids, teaching them how to swim, always present, always involved. His sister Crystal spoke of him with admiration, painting a picture of a loving, family-oriented man. But behind the carefully crafted image of a devoted father and hard-working professional, James harbored a darkness that had been with him for years, a past stained with violence and unresolved trauma. According to his sister, James had grown up witnessing terrifying moments of rage within his own home. He had seen his mother, seething with fury over his father's infidelity, sitting on the stairs with a baseball bat in hand waiting. The second his father walked through the door, she swung again and again, her anger manifesting in brutal blows. But the violence didn't end there. Another argument, another eruption of rage. This time she reached for a knife, her temper spiraling out of control. And James stood there, a helpless child, watching it all unfold. He saw what unchecked anger looked like, what it could do, how it could consume a person. Did these moments shape him? Did they plant the seeds of his own uncontrollable fury? A defense lawyer would certainly argue that they did, that James was merely a product of his environment, repeating the cycle he had been exposed to. But trauma alone doesn't excuse what happened that night. By late August of 2015, James and Amanda had been separated for months. He had moved on, or at least, that's what everyone thought. James was seeing someone new, yet his obsession with Amanda hadn't faded. Instead, it had festered, growing into something dangerous, something deadly. Amanda had done nothing wrong. She had simply wanted to break free from their toxic marriage, to rebuild a life of her own. But James refused to let her go. His attack wasn't just a crime of passion or a fleeting moment of lost control. It was premeditated. It was the culmination of his growing rage, his need for dominance over the woman who dared to walk away. And in the end, Amanda paid the ultimate price for nothing more than wanting to be free.
To me, I won't do nothing to you. I won't bring this up in court about what you really are. And we both know what you really are. You're lucky I don't tell our children about this, Amanda. You're disgusting. That's what you are. Please talk to me. Please. Amanda, I'm in court. Please talk to me. Please, this is the last time I'm telling her today. Please.
Now all of this toxicity comes to a peak when a neighbor sent James a photo. Lamar, shirtless, mowing Amanda's lawn. That was all it took to set him off. Fury consumed him, igniting a relentless storm of abusive text messages and voicemails that wouldn't stop until the day of the murders. In their conversation, he texted her, "Oh, and your boyfriend has been parking at the playground and walking around the back. The whole neighborhood knows. You should just have him park out front like a man. Yeah, everyone knows what you are. Don't worry, I will speak with him face to face sooner than later." Amanda, trying to diffuse the situation, responded, "He's not my boyfriend. Like I've told you before, he helps me with the yard work, painting, moving furniture, etc." But James wasn't having it. So why doesn't he park in the driveway if he isn't hiding? And I guess he is married, right? I have a picture of him. These weren't just messages, they were threats. And James had acted on threats before. Amanda had already filed a domestic violence injunction against him, but he had no respect for boundaries. He had violated the order before, once by stealing her clothes from the house and setting them on fire in the yard. In fact, on the morning of Thursday, August 27th, the very day of the murders, James had been in court for violating that order. He had sat there, calm, composed, no one knowing that in less than an hour, he would commit an unthinkable act. Now, like many abusive partners, James was a contradiction, one moment desperate for forgiveness, the next consumed by paranoia and rage. Just a day before the murders, on Wednesday, August 26th, he sent Amanda a message dripping with regret. "Please try to start forgiving me so we can move on. I really miss you and our family being together." But this wasn't love, it was manipulation. His so-called remorse was just another tool to control her, and when it failed, he resorted to terror. In the early hours of Thursday morning, at around 4 o'clock, James broke into Amanda's house. He wasn't there to apologize or win her back. He was there to confirm his worst fear, that she had truly moved on without him. As he searched through her belongings, he found all the evidence he needed to send him into a rage. Men's clothing scattered around, adult toys, clear signs that Amanda was seeing someone else. It was the final trigger. Any lingering facade of sorrow vanished, replaced by pure, uncontrollable fury. He tore through the house like a madman, yanking open drawers, flipping furniture, ripping through her most personal possessions. By the time Amanda returned home around 9 o'clock that morning, she walked straight into a nightmare. Her home was unrecognizable, ransacked, torn apart as if a hurricane had passed through. Furniture was overturned, drawers emptied, personal belongings scattered and violated. The place she once considered safe had been transformed into a scene of chaos and destruction. Shaken and unnerved, she immediately reached out for support, calling her friends Lindy and Rachel. Perhaps she was seeking comfort, maybe advice. What she didn't know was that this phone call would unknowingly set the stage for the final, tragic moments of her life. But James wasn't done tormenting her. Not satisfied with the destruction he had already caused, he sent Amanda a final chilling text. This time, his words carried a thinly veiled threat. "You're an awesome person. Don't take me from my kids. It's all I have. Call me or I am going to come find you." His desperation was palpable, but so was the danger lurking behind his words. It was clear that if Amanda didn't respond, he was willing to escalate things further. Perhaps hoping to de-escalate the situation, Amanda called him back. At exactly 9:41 in the morning, she argued with him over the phone, just 10 minutes after James had left the courthouse. It's unclear what was said between them, but whatever Amanda told him, it wasn't enough to stop him. At this point, nothing could. After the call, James moved with calculated precision. He drove to a gas station, then to his sister's house where he had been staying, then back to the gas station, this time to buy fuel. Somewhere along the way, he armed himself with 2 handguns, a 9mm and a .45 caliber. His every move was deliberate. He wasn't acting on impulse anymore. He was following a plan, one that had only one possible ending. During his drive, James made one last phone call to his father. A woman walking her dog nearby overheard the conversation and later recalled the desperate plea in James's father's voice. "Please, please, son, come back and get your truck. Everybody knows what you've been through." His father was begging him to stop, to turn back before it was too late. But James's response was chilling, filled with a heavy finality that left no room for hope. "I just can't take this anymore," he said. And with that, he continued his deadly course. James didn't pull up to Amanda's house the way a visitor would. He didn't park in the driveway. He didn't knock on the door. Instead, he parked on a nearby street and approached from the rear, moving like a predator stalking its prey. He knew exactly what he was going to do, and he had no intention of leaving until his mission was complete. The first gunshots shattered the morning silence, ripping through the living room with terrifying precision. Rachel and Lamar, caught completely off guard, barely had time to react before James
Over there.
He's not in there! Please stop! Put that down! Put it down!
Hello?
was fired at them. Every pull of the trigger was fueled by a single purpose: to make them pay. Amanda tried to run, but James was faster. He gunned her down in cold blood, making sure she never had the chance to escape him again. Lindy, who had just arrived moments earlier, never stood a chance. Before she could process the horror unfolding before her, she was executed on sight. And then, just as quickly as he had arrived, James disappeared. He left behind chaos, death, and devastation, but he also left behind 2 witnesses: Lamar, miraculously unharmed, and Rachel, wounded but still alive. They knew exactly who had done this. They could name the killer. And now, so could the police. The manhunt for James Terry Colley Jr. began immediately after the murders. Law enforcement agencies worked tirelessly to track him down, knowing he was armed, dangerous, and capable of further violence. That very night, in Norton, Virginia, an unexpected call to 911 would lead to his capture. A distressed woman reported a terrifying encounter on the road. She explained that a reckless driver had nearly forced her off the highway. Describing the scene in a
He just had me come to a complete stop in the road and tried to hit me. I had 3 small children in my car.
panic, she said. Acting quickly, Norton police located and stopped the vehicle. Inside, they found James, along with several firearms. James was officially charged with a long list of crimes, reflecting the full scope of his violent actions. He faced 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Amanda Coley and Lindy Dobbins. He was also charged with 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder for Rachel Hendrick and Lamar Duberly, who had narrowly survived the attack. Additionally, he was accused of burglary with assault or battery, burglary of a dwelling, and aggravated stalking after an injunction. The prosecution was prepared to ensure that justice was served. At trial, James's defense team attempted a controversial argument, claiming that his actions were not premeditated. They suggested that he had been in an altered mental state at the time of the killings. A psychiatrist testified that James was experiencing parasomnia, a sleep disorder associated with abnormal movements and behaviors during sleep. The defense argued that he had taken Ambien, alcohol, and other drugs, which supposedly left him in a confused, dreamlike state. In essence, they were claiming that James Colley had been sleepwalking when he committed the murders. However, this defense quickly crumbled under scrutiny. Just an hour and a half before the shootings, James had been present in court, where he was seen behaving rationally, answering questions sensibly, and showing no signs of intoxication. He had explicitly denied being under the influence of any drugs or alcohol during the legal proceedings. This directly contradicted the claim that he was impaired at the time of the attack. Furthermore, surveillance footage, phone records, and witness testimonies all painted a different picture, one of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. The jury deliberated, but the decision was swift and unanimous. James Colley Jr. was found guilty on all counts. Not only that, but the jury also reached a unanimous recommendation for the death penalty. The prosecution had presented 4 aggravating factors beyond a reasonable doubt, solidifying their case. First, James had been previously convicted of another violent felony. Since he had committed multiple murders and attempted murders at once, this applied. Second, he carried out the murders while engaging in burglary. Third, each murder was deemed especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Finally, and perhaps most damning, the jury found that he had committed each killing with cold, calculated premeditation. One of the most haunting testimonies came from the medical examiner, who revealed that Amanda Coley had been fully aware during the entire attack. She had been shot 9 times before finally succumbing to her injuries. The sheer brutality of the crime reinforced the jury's decision. This was not an accident nor a crime of passion. It was an execution. In November of 2018, James Colley Jr. was sentenced to death. He appealed the verdict, but in 2020, the courts upheld his sentence. Today, he remains on death row, awaiting.
The judge called it more than murder. He described it as executions. Now, James Colley has been sentenced to death.
Colley murdered his wife and her best friend while they begged for their lives. Clearly, Judge Howard Maltz didn't believe Colley's explanation that it was all an accident.
His fate. Now, what made this case even more controversial was the unwavering support James received from his own family, particularly his sister. Before the trial even began, she stood firmly by his side, fully believing in his innocence. In one recorded call, she even led a heartfelt prayer for him, asking that he be released safely from jail. But what she failed to consider was the devastating reality of his actions. No matter how deep her love for her brother ran, or whatever justification James may have believed he had, nothing could ever make up for the fact that he stole the lives of 2 mothers, women who left behind a total of 5 young children. These children were now forced to grow up without the warmth, love, and guidance of their mothers. Their families were left shattered, their lives forever changed by an act of violence that could never be undone. During the trial, Lindy Dobbins' husband took the stand, his testimony filled with grief and devastation. He spoke about the unbearable pain of losing his wife, about how their children had to face life without their mother, and how the loss had left a wound that would never fully heal. His words were a painful reminder that behind every crime, there are innocent lives that suffer.
Little League baseball games are attended with an empty blue chair. For Lindy to sit in and watch Patrick play. Ava's swim team t-shirts were designed with the Swimming for Lindy logo to remember Ava's mom.
Suffer the most. So if James were your brother, what would you do? Would you pray for his release, hoping for a second chance? Or would you acknowledge the weight of his actions and the irreversible damage he caused? As you think about your answer, let this be a reminder. Domestic violence doesn't just happen in isolation. It can spiral into unimaginable tragedy, tearing families apart in ways that can never be repaired. And when it does, the only question left to ask is, could this have been prevented? If you like the way we create these videos and you want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives.